Yeah, one has to show up. And I guess really this pathwork is all about showing up as much as we can. Um, and at least, of course, recognizing when we don't want to show up, right? I mean, the
Yes.
guide in almost every lecture, the focus is on drum roll, please, negativity, right? I mean, that certainly is true about this lecture too. Um, this lecture, yeah, the promise, we always talk about how in the lecture, usually in the beginning, there's a promise. The guide says, well, this is what you can have if you do the work. And in this lecture, the promise is on page 2. He says, um, quite a few of you feel renewed in a way you would never have believed possible. Life, inwardly and outwardly, is an entirely new, joyful, rich experience beyond your wildest fantasies. Wherever this is the case, certain inner processes have taken place, about which I will now speak more comprehensively in order to make you more conscious of them and to help also those to go through these processes who have not already done so. So, wildest fantasies, right? I mean, I don't know, being on a yacht in the Aegean Sea, maybe. Um, but that's the promise, right? Yeah. This lecture is about something very straightforward that almost everybody could understand. And we had discussion with some folks in the at the Pathwork conference in Ottawa about teaching the Pathwork to kids. Apparently, there's a lot of interest in Holland. People in Holland are working on Pathwork concepts for kids. And I was just thinking, the basic concept here we're talking about, faith and doubt and truth and distortion, is certainly very straightforward to grasp, right? I mean, that faith um, properly formulated is not blind faith. I mean, there's a distortion, which basically, you see a lot in the movies. I think when they kind of satirize the Catholic Church, where people are saying, hey, look, just have faith. Everything's going to be fine. Or like you're on the Titanic. Don't worry, have faith. We're going to make, even if we're going to hit the iceberg, you'll be fine. In other words, faith is supposed to be put your blinders on and just trust that everything will be fine, even though it doesn't look so good. So that's not faith. Faith is obviously not um, being blind.
I have a great quote.
Yes, go ahead.
It's from a movie that I saw, a true movie called The Innocents, and it's The Innocents, and it's the true story about it happened during the war. The Germans took over a convent and they raped all the nuns, and then one of the nearby medical group discovered all these nuns pregnant, and they went to help them. And the innocent, but the last line of the movie, which I plagiarized, that's not the right word, I took for the end of On Shelter Love, is faith is 24 hours of doubt and 1 minute of hope.
24 hours of doubt and 1 minute of hope.
I just thought that just like.
Yeah. So faith is not supposed to be something that confounds intellectual knowledge or belief. I think that's different from the concept of yielding to a greater presence or a greater knowledge, intuitive knowledge. But distorted idea of faith is that basically it's gullibility. So faith is not gullibility. Instead, faith is actually what I call justified faith. In other words, faith is based on experience. If you take certain steps, you can count on the fact that these things are going to work out because they've worked out before. Right? I mean, is that in other words, if you, like, for example, if you're good and charitable to people and they come back and care for you and reciprocate, then you can have faith that by being a good person, you'll get something in return. Right? I mean, now the guide says there are 4 steps to obtaining realistic faith. The first, I believe, is to open yourself to new possibilities. You believe that something may be possible that you doubt is possible. That's on page 3. The first stage would be to contemplate a new way of functioning, as opposed to continuing in the particular negative chain reaction that has been discovered. So the way you've always done things does not necessarily have to be the way that you can do things now. And if you do things in a different way, then you'll find that that effort is rewarded. He says, I recognize the old way of functioning as being destructive, negative, undesirable for myself and others. I do not know yet that there is another way. Perhaps I am indeed an expression of divine reality that dwells deep within me, even if I have not experienced myself as a divine reality. If that possibility exists, it also has the wisdom to convey to me how I can find another and better way of functioning in this or that particular area. I will simply be receptive to this as a possibility. So, you challenge an old way of behaving. And I guess you can apply this to all kinds of different situations.
That's the first step to manifestation too.
Right, that's the first step, right? You contemplate that something could be different.
That something's possible.
It's possible,
You
that's
open
right.
yourself to just believe that maybe.
Right,
it is.
that maybe things could be different. Like, maybe you don't have to keep getting into a fight with your boss or your wife, or just
Actually, what I was thinking was, you're talking about changing your behaviors, but for me, the thing that I've noticed is that it's almost a way of thinking or an expectation that changes. Like I was locked into this rut that when something happened on the outside, that my inner self wouldn't come to some conclusion, and then I would act on that. So it's not necessarily the behavior, but if I change the conclusion, like question, well, do I have to react that way inside, or do I have to have that feeling? Our feelings come from somewhere else and we can't always control them, but it's something, well, what is that feeling based on? Is that based on some error? So it's like an internal thing a lot of time that changes, and then the behavior follows, right? The behavior follows.
Yes.
right. And then
And to bring it to that deeper level, I think.
and like Teresa's saying, there's kind of an intellectual component here to that. You're kind of thinking about things in a different way. But the second step is that you open yourself to the divine ground within you. In other words, you try to ask the divine self within you to provide an answer. Your intellect can't necessarily do it. You've got to go deeper and find a new way of experiencing something, or a new way of coming to terms with the negative thing that you've been manifesting. And then the third step is,
So that was the second step.
the second step. Third step is kind of similar. I fully surrender to the greater reality in the universe. I let go of the known safety valves, the familiar ego habits of finding security and self-fulfillment in at least partially negative ways. I surrender to the divine power and let it guide me.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right?
It's a tough one. And then the fourth step is when you really live the reality that you initially were trying to have faith in.
Yeah.
It becomes part of you. You live from that.
That's also like one of the manifestating, and it goes to Jesus, because he said, when you pray, believe that you have received it. So that's a big thing in out there right now with manifesting what you want, is that you behave as if you already have what you're trying to.
Right.
Which is
right.
another way of saying what
Exactly.
step 4.
Right. All right. So that's faith. Now, doubt is also straightforward. Like, if I were to explain to a kid, I'd say, look, you doubt the fact, you doubt that you can win this race, or you can't get in the 100-yard dash. And let's say you don't think you can break, what's a good time? 15 seconds and 100 mile.
No.
Like you don't think you can compete, or you don't think you can make the team. Well, doubt your doubt. Just because you doubt that you can do it doesn't mean that
That
you
you're
have to
right.
surrender to that doubt. You can doubt your doubt. And I always like these things that the guide, like, it reminds me of another thing the guide often says, which is, if you don't want something, you can want to want it. Like I don't want, I want to, I can't bring myself to want, let's say, a particular experience. It's too threatening, but I can want to want it.
I always think that one. I've struggled with forgiving. So
Mhm.
it's like, you want to
Right,
forgive
you
someone,
can't forgive somebody, but you
But
can
you-
want,
but then sometimes it's
you-
like, well, I don't even really want to forgive them. I don't want to.
but you can want to
But then
want.
it's like, I want to.
I
Yes.
want to forgive
Yeah.
them.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I can
That's
see that
awesome.
pretty
That's
soon.
an
like
awesome
we
prayer
observe-
right there.
yeah.
Let's say you
Yeah,
hate,
that's a
yeah,
good
let's say
one.
you,
Our minister used to say, to try to try, just to try. So it's the same kind of thing, you
like
know,
if you,
Bring it back.
one step, because sometimes that you need to back up a few steps to get yourself into that space where you're not really thinking, I don't believe this. Because as long as you're going through the motions, but you're not really all in, you're not aligned, you're not gonna get it or manifest it or anything. So
But that's a very good point there, because doubt your doubt.
Yes.
I mean, because it so often occurs to us, we doubt our faith,
yeah,
right?
correct,
But it never really occurs to us
to doubt the
to
doubt.
doubt the doubt,
No,
right,
right? I mean,
Right.
isn't that crazy though?
yeah,
It's just like we so set in this way of thinking
yeah,
that it's like, yeah, the doubts are certain, but the faith is uncertain. So,
right, right,
wait a minute,
right. We're
what's going?
so sure of our doubts.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
it's-
but not.
Yeah,
but
it's,
this concept is beautiful.
Or
You
faith.
have to doubt, and then by doubting your doubts,
Yeah,
you will eventually reach actual faith.
right,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a little bit like the prayer, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
yeah,
I love that one. I pray
Yeah.
that often.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a good one.
So now
Help
those
down.
are the two concepts of faith and doubt, and truth and distortion. But in the first 2 pages of the lecture, the guy talks a lot about the negative nucleus that has to be exposed or dispelled, right? So we can't get away from that, right, ladies and gentlemen?
Well, work has to be done.
Because what the guide says here,
Persistent little nucleus, isn't it?
he says,
Big time.
well, second page, and Pathwork says, I want to talk about the true and false concepts of faith and doubt, about the duality that can distort faith as well as doubt. This is the topic that should have fully understood, make the next step much easier for those who have arrived at the crossroads. This is important because if change is contemplated before the unpleasant, unpalatable truth is fully seen, accepted, and dealt with, it cannot work. Right? So what does he mean by the unpleasant, unpalatable truth? He talks about basically the addiction that people have to negativity. Talks about let's see if I can find that. The negative nucleus.
The bottom of the
Yeah,
first
it's actually,
paragraph.
bottom first paragraph. Many of you on this path have by now come face to face with your basic negative attitudes, the negative nucleus, the negative cluster that is one comprehensive whole, or perhaps it is a series of negativities strung together. It is an ongoing chain reaction, really a vicious circle. You may start out with the concept of finding your problems, but when you speak of problems, you really only deal with the manifestations, the results of this inner negative nucleus. When you go beyond the surface manifestation, the problematic life situation, you find embedded within a wall of protective covering the lower self attitudes, intents, feelings, thoughts, and actions It is not easy to see the negative nucleus in its entirety, its connectedness, its cause and effect chain reactions. As I said, this requires dedicated commitment, wholehearted work, the utter will to be truthful with the self. Utter, right? Utmost, utter will. So, what he's saying is that this negative nucleus is what prohibits pleasure and what prohibits understanding. And I think there's a way in which the guide is saying that this topic of faith and doubt shed light about how to dissolve the negative nucleus, I think. Yeah, and the guide, of course, on page 1, just to recap, another thing he says on page 1 is that the negativity that we know exists within us, we didn't want to face it. Humanity does not want to face it. Instead, we create authorities that punish us, tell us what to do. So we project a negativity outside of ourselves. We are, we know we're guilty. We should be punished for these things. We create a priesthood. We create hierarchies, slavery, I suppose, a way to oppress us because of our guilt, of these feelings that we have, these negative intentions that we have. This knowledge that we are the people that create, our negativity creates our suffering, we don't want to face that. Instead, he says, we have misused this knowledge and made it into a punitive, authoritarian judgment that elevates those who judge and puts down those who are being judged. Religions have been particularly guilty of this distortion. So, as we know, and the guide says later in this paragraph, something that we all understand, that we have come into an age where the whole concept of personal guilt has been cast aside. We're not responsible at all. Everything that happens to us is a product of the environment. We're basically helpless actors who are in the grip of whether it's class warfare, whether it's the inhumanity of certain people toward us, not us. The bad things that happen have nothing to do with us. He says, all concepts of sin, evil, and personal responsibility for human unhappiness were being denied. So, in other words, I mean, we're all familiar with this point of view, right? That basically there's no personal responsibility, there's no sin, any evil does not exist. We don't carry it. This concept of original sin is wrong. We don't have that. We are instead victims of forces beyond our control. Now that's the flip side of the authoritarian system, where we have to create authorities to keep beating us up for our sins and keep punishing us. So, transcending both of these, we're able to explore our creativity in terms of creating our own lives. He says, there is no pain that is not in some way the result of some denial of truth and denial of love. There is no pain that is not, in the last analysis, caused by a violation of spiritual law, a basic dishonesty, and somewhere an ill will. Once you fully understand this, you approach a crossroads. So in other words, you accept responsibility for causing the disharmony in your life, but you don't have to blame somebody else for doing that. And you don't have to put somebody up on a pedestal to punish you for the suffering that you're experiencing. I mean, it puts a gigantic responsibility on each of us, I think. Right?
Ultimately, that's
I
where
mean,
it lies.
That's what he's all about.
That's
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
One of the prerequisites of self-realization is full self-responsibility.
Yeah.
You can't, we're not, we have to. Because we're
The
creating
first step.
everything, and so how can we blame anything other than,
But that doesn't mean that evil doesn't exist and bad things, people do bad things to others.
of course,
But they're in a karmic, there's a karmic unity
of course,
when suffering exists between the sufferer and the inflictor of suffering. Right? There's a circuit
yeah,
that exists. So you know, when I think about these things and when I read these paragraphs here, those aspects of you where you hate rather than love, where you separate yourself in your defense rather than openly trust, where you look away rather than face, where you deny rather than affirm, where you distort truth rather than are in truth, then you see the place where you create unhappiness and frustration. So, you know, you look at your life and you ask yourself, you know, where are the negative areas? Where is the suffering? And how do where's my part in that suffering? And I think that the guide is saying in this lecture that this path of understanding the two aspects, faith and doubt, in truth and distortion, are ways to help you unlock areas where you have negativity. Like, for example, obviously people often have negative thoughts in which they deny the goodness of others. And the concept of having faith in the goodness of others is something that if you deny it, that's a negative manifestation in your own life. So let's all talk about this. I was kind of thinking about, because negativity is an elusive thing, right? I mean, the guide often says that we're not the kind of people that will commit criminal acts. You know, we're not going to go out and hit somebody over the head and steal their money. So the thing is, where is the suffering and the negativity in each of us? You know, and how do we confront it? It's easy to deny it, I think. The mask self, right? The famous mask self.
That's right.
Hey,
It's not so-
I don't have any
not
problems.
so easy
I'm
to
proud of
deny,
the
I'm totally cool.
because you can feel it.
I'm more or less perfect.
It's not that easy to deny.
And if I snap at somebody or get angry, I'm just going to ignore that. That didn't really happen.
No, but you know, you feel it.
Yeah.
Right. So
At this point, I know everybody in this room and on the Zoom feels it. You know.
Yeah, no, I think we're at that point. But you know what? One key thing that I see here is that self-honesty, though, Alan, right? I mean, that's the first step, seems like, that you have to really be honest enough with yourself
Right,
that you can say, well, this negativity is in me.
right.
Because it seems that when you deny that negativity, that you know, seeing that negativity in yourself, then you tend to project it on
Of
others
course, that's what
and
happens.
blame other people,
Somebody
somebody outside.
You know,
Outside, you know, this is his fault, the society, or
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
the conditioning, mother, parents, you know, from the past, my childhood, you know.
Right, exactly.
All of that.
Ellen
That's
just-
the favorite one, we all do.
Ellen, I'm
Oh, yeah.
sorry I screwed up because we started at 6:30, but thanks for joining us. That was my mistake. It's Ellen
Oh,
Weiss.
Ellen.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi,
We're all
Ellen.
talking.
Hello, Alan.
Maybe you want to say it's 6:30 hence.
6:30 for the future.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Juan.
Yeah, no, that's what I am saying. That you know, I see that honesty, that self-honesty is like one of the key things here
First step.
in this work, like one of the first steps.
First,
And then,
you have to just face the truth.
exactly, yeah, and then that leads to self-responsibility. It's like, okay, once you are honest enough with yourself and say, yeah, this is in me.
Yeah.
You know,
But at
I am
least
the
you-
one somehow. I don't know exactly how, but somehow
Right.
I am creating these things that are happening.
Right.
Are happening to me that are not pleasant.
Exactly.
You know, that cause me discomfort, that
Right.
cause me unhappiness,
'Cause
that
as
I'm
long-
not happy
at
with.
least you're looking at the right place. As
Yeah.
long as you're in that victim mentality, it's, you know, it's as long
Yeah,
as you're just not even in the right sandbox.
right. Yes.
You're not gonna find the treasure when you're digging in the wrong side of the beach. You have to get
Correct.
where it is, which is inside.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that was huge. That's a huge breakthrough when you just know instantly.
is.
Even when something really
Which-
bad happens to me, I always just like, oh, Tracy, why'd you do that to yourself? Even when it seems so obvious that somebody has done something. I know I know somehow, some way I've created it.
Co-creator,
Yes.
if not a full creator.
Yes.
co-creator.
And it's painful to this because it's much easier to say, it's their fault, it's his fault, her fault, the world's fault, this, whatever, than to say, no, it's me. But at least once you get to that point, you're not wasting your time pointing fingers because it's not out there. Not,
Well, and it provides a sense of relief,
yeah,
right? That when
It
you
does.
accept the truth and you work through it, whatever it is, the difficulty is, you come to, greener pastures. If we were just staying in suffering and self-condemnation, there wouldn't be any motivation to go through the process again, right? So I mean, that's got to be the measure that there's greater peace once we come through it.
And
There is
that's,
greater- there is greater peace. It's
Yeah,
much more
obviously.
painful, at least for me. I mean,
Right.
for me, it's much more painful because then it's like I know I'm doing it, and it's like, oh, come on, Tracy, again, But at least you're right, it does feel more peaceful. It's if I'm thinking somebody's doing it to me, then I'm not peaceful at all. I'm hurt, I'm angry, I'm on guard, I'm thinking negative thoughts. And that just spins and spins and spins and
Or you know the
perpetuates.
truth.
And you're not in the truth. You're not in the truth. So that's a big, huge breakthrough. And then of course the instinct to blame is so strong though. You have to catch you have to catch yourself right from the get-go and say, wait, okay. And that what you said is not to deny that somebody might have done something. I mean, it's right. But how did
What's your part?
what's my part in
You
this
said that, and I remember said that to you. What was your
part in this
and the other thing
big old mess?
that's coming to me is where I was saying before about how just I've noticed, internally when I am untruthful.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm like, it's such a bad habit. Keep saying, well, I wouldn't do that, or I wouldn't feel that way, or I wouldn't think that way, or I wouldn't create that. I don't have that hate. Well, not me.
Yeah.
It's so automatic, and now I've noticed more and more, like I'll catch myself and I'll go, oh, wait a minute, gotta get that.
Yeah.
Even though it it says it's painful to admit
Very
that, but
painful.
once you start to crack it open,
Yeah.
you're
You
able,
get better
it
to-
builds the faith. that you
Yes, you can do it more easily because it's like, okay, I know this mess that I'm stepping into, it'll be
and
okay.
it doesn't mean I'm gonna, the old, you're gonna go to hell, or you're
Right.
bad, or you're not lovable, like
No.
all those things, like so black and white. It's
Right.
like, okay, I'm harboring this hate that needs to come out.
Right.
I need to confess to myself.
First, you're
Yeah, that, oh, I'm doing this, and then work, deeper.
right.
But it can start with one slightest little thing.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I'm lying, I'm sorry.
Does anyone,
Yes.
any comments from cyberspace?
There we go.
Ellen's here.
Oh, there's on.
Any thoughts you guys have about this subject?
Yeah, so Alan,
Yeah,
can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, super. Yeah, so you mentioned about I guess, as doubt, that the doubting of doubt can bring us into faith, right? That's somewhat clear. I think one other area that I felt was helpful there about the usefulness of doubt was in recognizing that we can move beyond our illusions, our belief in our illusions. A lot of our identity that we either defend or try to assert as being important in our life is a little self. And if we acknowledge that, it's not so much that our doubts are negative, but rather that even our beliefs in something that we perceive to be our positive or our survival instinct or whatever it is, those things do blind us towards a more absolute truth. And if we can see that doubting these absolute beliefs in the little can lead us more into acknowledgement that there is a better way, like the guide is saying in the first step, then it's the balance, right? It's the polar balance of faith in a bigger way, but doubt that I already have all the answers. Okay. Because if you believe that you already have all the answers, and that's an active belief, then you'll be stuck not moving beyond what you already know. Okay, so doubt, when I look at doubt and skepticism, it's actually not a negative term to me ever. I think I'm just naturally a skeptic. But yeah, and sometimes it can go way too far, of course, like you were mentioning. But I think that there's a very good constructive use of doubt as well in moving beyond illusions or beliefs in the false, beliefs in the little, beliefs in the powerless, beliefs in the I'm not enough, or beliefs in I'm the victim, like Tracy was saying, and other people are doing it to me and I don't have a part. These are all beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Eva was a skeptic too. I really do. And so maybe I think she was also, I believe that she doubted her doubts about the spirit world and whether such a thing is possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said she didn't remember after she channeled.
Yeah, no, she didn't remember anything that
But
she
she
had
would listen
channeled.
She'd have to read it, yeah. Or listen.
Like somebody would say, well, that was a pretty good discussion about X and Y topic. And Eva would say, wow, that's what it was about.
She must have gone into a deep trance, meditative trance.
Well, the audio should hear.
Yeah, yeah.
Breathing.
Yeah.
Hey, Barbara, what's on your mind?
I guess what's on my mind is
Even's here.
like the fourth stage or the fourth step, the third and fourth step of faith.
Yes.
I feel like I would have, that I could use some help in clarifying that. I think the first step, of being open to possibility, and the second step of being open and actually experiencing something, those are pretty clear. And then the third step of saying, yes, I've experienced this, but it's not really my own yet. But then the fourth step is a little tricky to me. I wonder if it's like it seems like it can go back and forth, and it also seems like it has like a component that is really pretty far beyond like normal experience in a way. I don't know. Does anyone relate to what I'm saying?
I was just saying the same thing, that I could use a little clarity with that too, because it, like on the outside, it just feels like they're saying, well, then you have to live it. But it's like, well, how do you get there? So I kind of agree with you that I don't really, like
Yeah.
step 3 is surrender, right? And then step 4 says that faith becomes an experienced reality. And it's like you really move into, it seems like, a new life or whatever. This stage, you always know that which is real and that which is false. There's no longer any confusion. Here the false doubts come in, about which we will speak shortly. The false doubts come in. So I have the same thing, like a little clarity on that. I'm not sure if anybody has.
I think that
Stephen's on.
Hey, Stephen, it's good to
Hey,
see you.
John.
We
David,
I'm
oh man.
He's
Hey,
dressed.
I'm sorry I'm late. I was a little confused with the start time. I've
Yeah,
been out of
we
town.
started at 6:30, but
Probably to get his
I
butler
didn't
here.
say that.
He's
Can we
right-
go back to the conversation? I'm sorry.
Oh.
We're in the middle.
Oh,
of a
sorry.
conversation.
Sorry.
Welcome, Stephen. I'm glad you're here, but we're in the middle of a
Hi,
conversation.
Stephen.
Thank you.
Come sta? I'm sorry, let her finish, I'm sorry.
Now so going back to the question. So what comes to me is it's like you're learning to ride a bike for the first time. And whoever's teaching you says, just keep pedaling and you'll get it. And so now we get on a bike and we just know that we're okay, right? Once we pedal, we don't think about it. So faith is like that, where we have enough experiences in trusting this force that's part of us, it's the universe, that's in everything, is going to hold us up. But, you know, it's like saying throw strikes, right? Until you have this experience of, I've been very blessed. I have a great amount of faith. I always
Amen.
have. But when I say, but we have to have evidence that it works, right? So what I would say is to get to this fourth step where it's an abiding force and presence that you believe and that you experience. It's by seeing little examples of when you connect.
Yes.
And when your faith supports you and when your doubt is answered.
Right. I think that's a good way to put it.
Makes perfect
Joe.
sense. Yes.
I think that in what the guide says, interestingly enough, he says, if the whole world confronts the outer reality you experience, you may begin to doubt that. But you cannot doubt any longer the reality of the inner universe you have gained as your home ground as a result of your consistent surrender to it. So I think that this sort of this is mirrored in a lot of accounts of people of faith, like when they used to say in Sunday school, you know, that the Christians went singing and into the gladiatorial, into the arena, they were singing and praising Jesus, even when the lions and tigers were going to maul them to death, you know. In other words, and very interesting. If the whole world confronts the outer reality you experience, you may begin to doubt that. So somehow there's an experience that everything is fighting with your inner faith and your connection to that reality, but you still feel it. I don't care if all the signs say that I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. I feel it. I know it.
Right.
I know I have the faith. I feel it.
It's a reality for you.
Right. And I think that this is obviously a keynote experience of many mystics. Mysticism is this, I think, in many ways. It is a perception of a different reality that is more real than the perception of our quotidian reality.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, you know, it's a blessed thing to be able to achieve that, to feel that, you know, to get there.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful, he called it a state of grace.
It is.
Guy,
Wow,
you know,
yes.
because it is that, really.
It is that.
You're like in this
state of
beautiful
grace.
state where you have this security,
Yeah.
where everything is like, regardless of what's going on outside, you know, in the external world, you have this assurance inside that all is well. You know what I mean?
Right, right. You
That all is
somehow
well, and this is what it is for you.
Yeah.
And regardless of what the outside seems to indicate, you know this is it. You know what I mean? Even if the rest of the world do not feel that.
right,
You know.
right.
Yeah, Juan, your use of the word assurance is perfect for that.
Yeah.
Oh,
That is exactly what I wanted to say as well. And Joel characterizing it as riding the bike, but you fall even when you know how to ride the bike. So you're always going to fall. There's always going to be falls in this world. But I mean, Joel summed it up perfectly by saying about riding the bike, because even you having the perfect assurance where you know that even after you fall, that you can still ride and the riding is going to continue. You know, it's not that the whole thing was an illusion and you just believed in something ridiculous that you could ride. You know, that's not step 4. Right. And it even says it. I just want to bring this up that not it didn't bring up the bicycle analogy, but or the metaphor, which was perfect, but it says on that same area that you were reading from, Alan, on this, I think it's the paragraph that says in the 4th step, right?
Yes,
Page what? The 3rd paragraph in page 6. There's a line that says, even if you lose this good state temporarily, and when Joel was speaking, I'm like, wow, that's like falling off the bicycle, and must revert in the spiral movement to the residues of negativity. At this stage, stage 4, you always know that which is real and that which is false, because you have that assurance that Juan was mentioning perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very fascinating. But what struck me about this lecture is how the guy so, I think, smartly, wisely, and intelligently explained, how to reach that level of faith, which is kind of contrary to what, religions teach you out there. Like you were saying earlier, Alan, about this blind faith. That's a wrong. It's a distortion of faith, right?
Yeah, it's an illusion.
It's an illusion, right?
Yeah, and doubting that illusion is really one of the first steps into having that self-responsibility, like the guide always discusses.
Yeah. So the way he goes here and explains step by step, and I love this thing because the way he specifically, and this gives you hope. I mean, I don't know, but to me, and I think for someone who have not much believing, you don't even have to believe in God that much. What he said here, use love and truth as your guidepost, because faith and love and truth is connected to that reality, which we call God, or, Jehovah, or, whatever you call it, right? But it is having that desire to connect with that, with that love and truth, that you reach that level of faith. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because contrary to what I think a lot of us or a lot of people out there, they just believe in some guru or some priest or somebody, or even the Bible blindly. They take this, the Bible says this and the Bible says that, and they just take it and, okay, if the Bible says it, I just believe it and follow it. No, what the guy is saying here, you need to really build up. You have to build that experience of faith until it feels like that reality to you personally, not necessarily to the priest that orchestrated a beautiful sermon and or some beautiful verse that you read in the Bible, but your experience, your feelings, your actual feeling tells you, because you feel it. It is a reality to you. It is a reality to you. And regardless of what anybody may say, you feel this within. Your feelings are the greatest witness that this is true. You know what I mean? And you reach that by first putting into practice, seeking love and truth. Love and truth. What is the truth of this matter here? Really, what do I not, what am I missing here? What do I not understand in this statement? Or maybe is he or she right? Maybe there is a possibility that something greater than what I have come to know so far exists out there, and then you start searching for that truth, for that love, that is the actual reality, because truth and love are synonymous. They the same thing pretty much, and so is beauty and everything else, all those aspects of God. But to go after that love and truth first, the way I understand it, is a way to reach that ultimate stage 4 that the guide so smartly explains here. And to me, it really is beautiful and so helpful, I think. So helpful, I think, when one open him or herself enough to that possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what he says at the end of the lecture. Yeah. Make love and truth your guidepost.
Yes, that's right. That's the last, yeah, and the,
Hard to
the
go wrong.
lecture.
Hard to go wrong, right?
Mhm.
Well, everyone's always acting in the name of truth and love, right? You name it, you know,
Of
you
course.
give me somebody. And,
My truth.
oh yeah,
My truth. That's what I believe. Yeah, there's something he said like this. It's like, well, this is the way I believe. This is my belief. You know, people excuse that. It's like, well, this is my belief. It is as good as your belief because this is my belief. Well, but is it based on truth and love, right?
right.
I think that's a test ultimately. You know.
Yeah. Uh,
Actually just feels like the idea of practice. Just everyday practice, you know, and then eventually, like the right. Before you know it, no hands.
mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, fine. All right, Beverly, do you have thoughts about the subject? Ellen?
Nothing original. Everything I was thinking has been said already.
Okay, oh well,
Oh,
okay, next.
no.
Thanks, though.
Not from you.
Uh,
Not in your way of saying it, Beverly.
yeah,
That's okay.
that's something nobody else has. Your own special ray of the divine.
That's right. They'll do.
Well, I guess I'm so sorry I was late. Yeah, I didn't remember about the time. It's a little harder to get there this early. Also, I really just skimmed this lecture, but I did want to speak on faith because was really, I just was reflecting that, you know, I'm going through, it's been a really rough 3 years and I'm really, you know, having a hard time with my physical condition. And it's very weird because I feel like at the deepest level, I have not lost any faith. Like I still believe in everything I felt like I was awakened to 10 years ago. It's kind of, I had this such a strong awakening experience, and I believe in oneness and God and love and truth, and you know that we don't die, we're eternal. I mean, I feel like I have this deep knowing that inside of me. However, I feel like I'm not really acting that way because I really am having so much fear that I'm really watching my thoughts and going, wow, I'm really like having a lot of thoughts. I'm never going to be well. I'm never going to have my life. I mean, so that's a very kind of a strange, and I'm not really sure if this lecture really addresses that. But I just wanted to, it just was just striking me so much, this strange experience that I have of it feeling like at the deepest level, I feel I have such strong conviction, but yet at the level of, you know, like the challenge that I'm facing, I fall. I mean, I feel like I'm in a continual fall right now. I shouldn't say that, not continual. I shouldn't say that. That's being hard on myself, but you know, I'm definitely scratching and clawing. um, and again, you know, because I didn't, you know, and of course, yes, it's very hard to like say, you know, this is again this physical illness thing, and what is, you know, how am I responsible for it? Which I kind of have always believed that we do have responsibility for our, you know, that the physical and the spiritual are connected, and that there's something going on inside of me, but on a practical level to really to really work with it is very, very hard, and being very challenged with that too. So I don't know. That's really about it.
Yeah, maybe it's time to open maybe you're at the second step where you would try to open yourself to divine reality and guidance about how things could be better or different, perhaps.
Yeah, and I'm always trying to do that. Like I feel like every day I am like asking, and I'm doing guided meditations to explore, and you know, it's really I felt a little funny coming to the group because I didn't read it, but I just feel like I do get a lot of strength just from connecting with you guys. And I feel like a lot of my problem right now is I'm too isolated. So I just like these groups once a month. I really do cherish that it's here because so I guess I'm just saying that because I definitely find that in a group and within discussion, I find it much easier to get these moments of, I feel like guidance speaks through people here and in other places too sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, sure, Joel, yeah.
So Ellen, just a couple observations come to me. Sometimes I think it's just and I'm sorry that you've been suffering for so long and that you're struggling at times. So I think it's how are you, what's just to be a witness of your own suffering, to do your meditation, breathe, and just let yourself feel whatever it is that you're feeling in your body. When you're not well, even if it means that you fall asleep, or maybe there's something that gives you some relief, because the feelings usually they come and go. Hopefully, so what gives you relief, and then when you think about the saints, and they all, almost all of them suffered a great physical difficulties, and so I don't know if it's it's almost like that when we're becoming more of the light, more of the love and the truth, that if it's our essence, that the physical dissolves, that it has to disappear, and sometimes it's through this physical suffering, right? And
Wow. I thank you. Like, yeah, wow. Yeah.
And so it's and just to remember, that the witness, your witness self, when you're playing music, and you just kind of connected, right? When you're playing your music at your best, and you're just surrendering to that, the higher force that's in you, that is you, and you're just, gliding on the bicycle, hands free as you're playing your music, that that witness of your suffering is always present, and it is you, and it's always there, holding you up.
I just want to say I really appreciate you. It's not funny, but I appreciate you saying to witness it, because that was so much my practice. Like when I first started meditating, and I think it was easier for me to witness my emotions or my thoughts. But with this, so I think I'm going to just try to make I'm going to like write the word witness down, to just like, even if I do it for a minute, like I just thought, I don't know, I just I'm like, I should just try to, like, even if it's just a minute, like 5 or 6 times through the day, to just say, just be the witness of the discomfort. I feel like I'm going to really try to do that. That sounds like a very good beginning for me. Yeah, so I appreciate that, Joel. Thank you.
Comment a little
Yeah,
bit.
sure.
Hi, Helen. Yes, I would just like to comment a little bit also, brief as I can. Like Alan was saying, I think that you may be right now at this point where as the guy describes these 4 steps of faith, and I think it sounds to me, I mean, maybe misunderstanding, but that you are in the stage of faith in the second one, where you are there, like you said, this word witness is, I think it's a great one, because it may be the right time now for you to, or the transitional time for you to cross onto the third state of faith, which is that surrender the guy talks about. And this is, I mean, to me, I'm all about love and surrender, because I even write the book about it. Because to me, ultimately, this is what it's all about, you know. Because once you just reach in that state, but this is the hardest part, though, to take that leap of, you know, of faith into the unknown. So I think my suggestion would be, if I may, for you to really use that word that you just said, that word witnessing, and witness your feelings, and witness into yourself. Go within, go into yourself and see, you know, witness into yourselves. Like, is there some kind of area where you are guarding against this surrender that the guy talks about? You know what I mean? Yes, you say you have your feelings and you have your faith and you meditate, and that's great. That's all seems to be the way I understand it, part of the number 2 stage, where you really are aware, you have opened yourself enough to you know, to this possibility, and you also are kind of asking for the divine to kind of like really provide this assurance that you know, that these you know, feelings of well-being that you want, right? But I think maybe now the time for you to perhaps observe and witness within yourself, by going within and looking into yourself, if there are some areas, some aspect of your personality, your psyche, where you may be guarding or fearing against, you know, this taking this leap of just surrendering. It's like, okay, Lord, you know, I have done what I can. All this here, I've done this, that, and the other. I just totally, unguardedly, nakedly surrender to you, and just like give in to that, and really by continuously. I mean, as you kind of fall, and you're gonna go back to perhaps insecurity and, you know, and doubts and everything else. That's all part of the process. But trying to persevere and taking that small steps into that bigger leap of faith, of really casting yourself into the unknown, into that divine aspect of you that you have not perhaps felt or reached yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, a physical, you know, it's really incredible thing how physical discomfort and physical discomfort and pain challenge, you know, the spirit.
Yeah.
Never, you know, I've experienced some level, but this is really like, I'm like, wow, it's really physical, you know, the certain elements of physical life. It's like, it's so gross and dense, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, we're ash. It's like our bodies are meat and ash. And, you know, I mean, on the purely physical, I'm not saying that's what I think we are. I know it's not essence, but this earthly level, I mean, it's real, you know what I'm pointing
Very
to?
real.
It's jarring, you know, the reality of a stab of skin, you know. It's not what happened to me, but you know, and I don't want to be horrifying, but wow. You know, but there are definitely, you know, human beings obviously who transcend, you know. It's like the you know, so many examples of the transcendence. So I think what did Joel say it about the saints who, you know, like went through, about the physical suffering that you know, I definitely have been thinking about that, you know, the challenge to faith of this dense physical experience, and the truth is, I do still feel that our essence is spirit, but I have to really I guess I'm being called to do the work, you know. I mean, and some, you know, you know, in some more real, you know, whether it's a path worker or some, you know, I don't know, but that's where I have to just really keep asking, I guess, for the guidance, is what, you know, what is the way, right, doing the deeper work.
Yeah, go ahead, Joel.
Thank you.
So when I'm suffering, I have a simple prayer that helps me. You know, help me, Lord, to understand what it is that I'm supposed to learn from this, please release me as quickly as possible. Thy will be done.
Yeah.
We seal it with thy will be done.
That's it.
So please tell me what it is I'm supposed to learn from this suffering. May be quick, and thy will be done.
That sounds good. But I mean, do you, Ellen, like relate to the thing about there is no pain that is not in some way the result of some denial of truth and denial of love? There is no pain that is not, in the last analysis, caused by a violation of spiritual law, a basic dishonesty, and somewhere an ill will.
I think that's an emotional.
You don't think the guy's talking about physical pain as
I
well
don't
as
think
emotional
so.
pain?
Well, funnily enough, it's one of the few things that came to me very, very, I saw that sentence, right? I
Yeah.
saw it, right? And of course, I just was like, oh God, I feel like I don't like, what would oh my God, I don't know. I'm not sure how, I'm just not sure. I mean, God, it's just challenging. It's like a koan almost, it's like, I'm open. I'm open to it. Like I didn't feel like, oh, that's bullshit. I don't believe that. I don't feel that at all. But I did feel like, what, but wait a minute. Like, it's hard to grok, as it came from some book, I guess that word. It's not a real word.
Stranger in a strange land.
Okay. I didn't read the book, but
Grok.
the word came to me, was
Grok, it
presented.
means to fully comprehend something.
How do you spell
Grok,
it?
yeah.
Grok.
Is it a real word?
It's a 60s word.
Yeah.
Came from a novel.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, Ellen, would you be prepared to say, for example, okay, in my physical pain, teach me, let me understand, have I in some way violated spiritual law?
What is it?
Yeah, that hurts. It hurts.
Why?
Tracy, I heard what you said, and I really feel like, the truly spiritual people I know are always working on taking responsibility, saying, what is my part, or how did I create this? But it's like when I hear it, I have violated, so I get, it's like, oh my God, that hurts, and it's hard to, but it's interesting because this person, well, it's weird because the person in my life who hurt me the worst would say that kind of thing. And I felt like he would say it with this kind of arrogance, well, I take responsibility for everything.
Uh-huh.
Done anything wrong, we just live. I don't think that physical pain is the result of something you've done wrong. I know there's a whole group of thought out there that, and they certainly sometimes, obviously, when you're all messed up emotionally and psychologically, it can manifest as a physical ailment. But if we live long enough, our bodies are going to break down. They're not eternal. What's eternal is our soul. So we can expect, if we are graced with a long enough life, that at some point we're going to experience the deterioration of our physical structure. And that involves, most of the time, it involves pain. So I don't think so. And there's just too many, I know of too many very spiritual people who endured tremendous, some of the gurus, and one woman I happen to know now who's like, they've endured tremendous amounts of physical pain. And I think it's, somebody said, we're in these it's a very dense, gross manifestation that we're experiencing right now. So it's subject to impermanence and dissolution, and everything that arises passes away. And that's inevitable. That from a rock to a human being, everything becomes and then deteriorates. So deterioration involves discomfort in many instances. So I don't think you've done something wrong or you brought your physical ailments onto you. I believed that the guide was referring to emotional pain, but it wasn't clear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I've always explored as if, the physical was also part of that. But what I wanted to say was, is that one thing I do sense on some level, I sense that I am deepening as a person. And I almost hate to say that. It's like, fuck it, like I'm fuck it, fuck this thing, But there is this thing that it's definitely, I just, it's hard to put my finger on, but it does seem that if I make it out the other side of this, that I will be a much more compassionate person. You know, I I could see that, it's like when you're in the middle of a process, you're going through the tunnel. So I'm going through the tunnel right now. So when I get more out the other side, Alan, I'm going to come back to you with my thoughts on that. And Tracy.
Well, and I think that your observation, I agree with your observation that there is, when we're suffering greatly, whether it's physical or emotional, there is a breaking down that does draw us closer to the light.
Actually, Eckhart Tolle talks
I
about,
did too. I just heard him say
he
that.
talks about the
The
universe
suffering.
will bring you the exact experience that you need
Yeah.
in order to have the
Yes.
most spiritual.
So I guess,
results.
Ellen, what I hear you saying
And
is,
he always says it's your friend. Your suffering is your friend. He always says that. Like if I hadn't suffered, he was like on the verge of suicide when he had his sort of.
Me too. I mean, I
epiphany.
was suicidal, but it was great suffering.
Yes, me
Sorry.
too, and me too. I mean, I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't suffered so greatly. And he always makes that point. So, people think suffering is a bad thing, but it hurts. Suffering in all forms that it manifests as pain is not it's suffering. That's why we call it suffering. But it does lead. It can lead one to turn inward.
Yeah, and
The Buddhists differentiated actually, which I thought was quite good. First of all, the Buddha said that we are all heir, H-E-I-R, to old age, sickness, and death. And that's who we are. He also said that there's the first and second arrow. The first arrow is if you're shot with an arrow, that's painful. The second, third, fourth, and fifth arrow is you suffering. First arrow is pain, it hurts. Second arrow is who shot me? Why was I shot? I shouldn't have been shot. That's called suffering according to Buddhist tradition. And he said if you could stop the second and then you go to the third, fourth, fifth, and whatever arrow and stay with the first one, then you're in pain. And that is a very small percentage of the overall suffering. And it's in how we add to the initial pain that we actually get into our suffering. And he also said that he teaches the end of suffering, which I may have missed somewhere along the line because I think I do suffer, but a lot less. So I try to stay within the confines of the first arrow, which is just pain. And I think that's synonymous with life to a certain extent as well as joy, really. And try not to add suffering to it.
I just wanted to say that I have a lot of sadness. I'm grieving the loss of Bill. He died just 6 months ago. And so I find myself sometimes just not knowing what's going to trigger it, but just finding, I'll see something or remember something and just feel like a lot of sadness. And I guess it's a kind of pain, but it doesn't last forever. I feel like I go through that cycle and almost, like, I'm not sure who said, it's like feeling, oh, maybe you said it, Ellen, like feeling more compassionate. Just sort of like, and also feeling like, well, that's my truth right now. That I'm very sad. I miss my my husband. And I'm not trying to get that, it's like I'm trying not to have those other arrows. It's just like, this is what it is, and I'll get through it. And I am, and I am getting through it. It's, but it's just really, it's just there for now at times.
It sounds like a clean wound.
Mhm. Yeah. The one thing, I mean, I guess, that I'm sharing, just going back to the idea of faith, that I have to say, when Bill died, I felt so much love and so much blessing, and, so much like just being there. And now, and I guess faith, a certain kind of faith, like just like, wow, this was really, and I thought, in a way, I thought that would last the rest of my life, just feeling like, wow, I had this great experience, or I had, and it's, it's like amazing, not amazing, but I find that my, negativity and doubts and, um, lack, anger, jealousy, all, my nucleus of negativity, is still there, it came back. And
It's a
so,
persistent little bugger.
what?
It's a persistent little bugger. That
Yeah.
there's some negativity that we all have. It's everybody's components are slightly different, but we all have it, and it's a formidable opponent.
Yeah, I mean, it just, just sharing that, it just kind of surprised me, that it was still there.
I know. I'm always surprised whenever I reach a point where I'm sort of in the Zen state, for lack of a better way to describe it, like really vibrating in a high frequency, and I can feel that I'm connected to the mothership. And I think, oh, okay, thank God, finally the end of my suffering. And then, of course, it's within a very short period of time, I'm right back, So I find in observing my own spiritual path that it ebbs and it flows. It's like the tide. The thing that is hopeful is that the periods where I descend are shorter, and the periods between the descents are shorter. So I spend more time in a higher vibrational frequency than a lower one, but I don't last very long. Even, I as Joel would say, oh, you're in your lower self again. Which is, but we tag team each other, because at this point, we recognize the presence of the lower self in ourselves, and of course in one another, and we are at a point where we can say that to the other person, and we might not like, and the lower self doesn't like to be called out, the nucleus, that negativity, but you yeah, you're right, okay, but yeah, it's not at least for me, it's a slow, gradual process of crawling towards the light, the truth, on my hands and knees, usually begging for mercy. That's the way it has felt for me.
Begging for mercy.
Begging for mercy as I crawl. Yes.
Yeah,
Juan.
I just want to say, share a little bit of, I guess, of my personal experience when it comes to, and the guy talks a lot about this almost in every lecture, the importance of facing the pain, not shirking away from it, not escaping, not avoiding it, not denying it, not suppressing it, either physical, emotional. I don't think it matters much. But I have experienced my own life the importance of really, I have come to experience that, the importance of facing the pain.
Yes.
I mean, most of us, it's a natural instinct with us. It's like really escape the pain when it comes. I mean, the body automatically even reacts. Yeah, you notice it when it's pain, when it's fear, right away you locked in. You shirk away.
If you put your head on the stove,
Yeah.
you should pull away.
Yeah, well, it's a natural, yeah, it's part of the self-preservation, right? In a way. But I have come to experience in my own life what the guy talks about so often, the experience, I mean, the importance of really face to face, not escaping, not shirking away, just confronting that pain, feeling it when it comes right there, right then and there. And one of the ways I experience, and I have mentioned this before, is when I run, for example, I run, once or twice a week, 6, 7, 8 miles, whatever. And I notice the pain on my knees when I start running is obvious. So there is a correlation here, and very important, I find the importance of self-awareness. Yes. When you focus self-awareness in that area where the pain is, either emotional, physical, or whatever. And the guy even talks about, like a righteous torturer, and they actually do this, that, let's say in prison or somebody who's a prisoner, they torture them to death. There is a point when the tortured person, that pain actually turns into bliss.
They stop.
Yeah, that's right. And they stop because they know this, right? They know this.
It's a known phenomenon.
Yes,
When you're
but it comes.
Somebody, yes.
Yeah.
So they have to.
Yeah.
If you keep it up, it has no effect on
them. It had no effect on them because the pain
stop.
have actually turned into bliss.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you consciously aware and you face that pain. When you've been tortured like this and where am I going to run? The pain is here. So they keep inflicting that pain and the person actually is okay. So you just surrender to that pain. Right. You surrender to it through self-awareness. Like, okay, I have no way to go. I just have to take this pain. And then at that point,
and then it's when they stop.
The pain turns into bliss and the torturer know, and then they stop torturing the person and then wait for some time until that goes and then they come again. But in my own life, I have experienced that when you face that when you actually focus that self-awareness in the area that is painful, the pain automatically start to dissolve. And I experienced that when I run, in my knees, when I have pain, when I run, or when I emotional, for example, as I was a chef there for this hotel where we had to deal with like thousands of people, 5,000, 6,000 parties we have to put up sometimes. And you're dealing with all kinds of cultures and all kinds of reaction in a unionized place. There's this anger sometimes that comes to you when somebody you are like on a deadline and you need to get things done. And this person has such a negative attitude, non-cooperation. This is anger that comes to you. You want to really strangle that person or kill them, somehow. But when you really, I noticed myself and I go, when I was able to catch myself feeling that anger and just focus on it, and that anger, that moment of that feeling that I was feeling inside, like I turn red and and react like this, automatically that anger also starts to dissipate. Yes. So there is some very strange thing in the guy, I think that's what the guy refers to, about the importance of really
observation,
confronting that pain and focusing self-awareness onto it. Yeah. Be with it, right? And just really and by going.
Once it removed, you're observing it.
She's always, but it's not easy though, because that pain is so sharp and so, that the first reaction even the body has is just to, go away. And to shirk away or escape or avoid it or stop, it's a natural reaction. And I noticed that also because I take cold shower usually, in winter, it's 0 degrees outside and I take a cold shower. The first reaction of the body is, it reacts to it strongly. But if I just, I keep doing it and I just observe myself feeling that cold water going on my body, there's no effect after it.
It's like
very shortly.
You tortured yourself past the point.
Past the point of something. So so that's a beautiful thing. I told you I experienced that when I went to the dentist. They wanted to numb me, and I said no, just I want to experience something. Yeah. So he started going and But I said, okay, I just sit there and observe myself, observe that pain. And it's like, after a little while, boom, that, I wasn't feeling that pain anymore. I know it's kind of crazy, but I wouldn't advise anybody to do that, okay?
What do you think?
Until you're ready.
Juan, I think you're an ascended master. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm trying.
So much work with you. I mean, anyway. So- I really wanted to say something else to Barbara, if that's okay, Barbara, about what you said about your feelings of sadness and when your husband passed, because something really struck me about that, and I'm curious what you think about this. Is that I have been, with a couple of people very close to, the passing time, and one when she did, and I feel like when, and of course, especially someone you're so close to, it when you're so close to their passing, their spirit, you're very in touch with the spirit, because that movement from life to the release of it is very palpable. It's, especially if you have a spiritual awareness. It just, I don't know, it made me think of the experiences, which are, none with someone as close as, as your husband, but to you. But I don't know, I just remember this experience of a friend who I watched as she left her body, and I felt it so powerfully. I just, it was so visceral and incredible that I wrote a song called "You're Singing with the Angels" when that happened. And I don't know, just when you spoke of it, I feel like when we're close to the passage of dying, and like, I guess there's so many Tibetan, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and this thing about, staying close to death is so important for our spiritual awareness. And I don't know, I just feel like it really was pertinent to everything we're talking about. That even Tracy, what you were, when you were talking about, the begging for, this, when we fall, the falling and the rising, somehow realizing that, we're here for a very short time in this form. And these moments when we're actually connected to people's spirit. I've had a lot of I'm saying people that close, but I've had some close people to me pass very close. It's weird. I'm thinking, it's funny. I'm almost in denial. I had a partner for 10 years who I wasn't with him when he passed, but he's no longer with us. And another man I dated, his very close friend passed, and anyway, so I'm, I'm closer to it than I realized. And so I guess you were just.
Well, I guess it's sort of the also appreciation of the preciousness of life and the gift that we have of being in these bodies and being able to experience life.
Yeah, the miracle.
So and just being grateful for that, in the present, because as I think Tracy was saying, how we're not going to last. I think that about, that we get older and have different maladies or whatever, and just to appreciate what it is that you have now, because it might be worse later on in your life. That's kind of like the Stoic philosophy.
Yeah,
Well, I think, life, is being like, when you're in pain, like what I got from what you were just saying, Barbara, is like, for me to, when I'm complaining about the pain and the really uncomfortable sensations, that life, the thing, and Eckhart Tolle talks about this, just life, life being a synonymous with God, really, that life itself, the force of life itself, it does transcend it. And it's like, we're kind of missing what life is. Like, I'm missing what life is when I'm caught in the, only, like right now when I'm with you guys, right, I'm still, my body is uncomfortable, but I'm focused on this precious this precious event with you all. and that's life, right? That's, yeah, anyway, I don't want to get crazy, it's just like I blow myself up with it, but that there's something here about it that I want to really try to remember. Anyway.
Well, it's certainly easier when we share things with others, isn't it? Like we don't see our negativities so well ourselves, and other people can often give us such a helpful look at them. And the suffering too, it's that's it's our lot in life, right? The thousand slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to have a friend, he passed on, who used to say, we do it together by ourselves. And I think of that very often. And I think that's very true.
Well, my mother, who passed in January at the age of 101 and a half, she never complained, ever. Sometimes when she was in pain, when I held her hand, I knew that it diminished her pain by about 10%. So I could do that. And I guess when there's somebody who loves you, who's in the room and close to you, you feel better, right? I mean, as infants, you feel better. And if you're 101, you feel better. So
next to her on this chair, and it's very
yeah,
so blessed.
that's another dimension of suffering, right? How our relationships with other people, and the worst suffering, I think, is when people feel alone and isolated. And when you let yourself be closer to people and together with people, you suffer less. Anyway, and the good energy you create helps.
I think, I'm sorry, I think for me, feeling alone and isolated is very painful. But the feeling that I'm doing it to myself eases the pain. So I know there's a way out. And that knowing that I'm doing it to myself for whatever reason, and I may not know the reason, but I know there's a door that I can open.
Yeah,
and that assuages the pain. I'm sorry?
your apartment door, and you can walk a half a block to my apartment and come on and join us.
And that's true. And I choose not to do it, so I stay in my loneliness. But I know I can walk a half a block.
He lives a half a block away. As soon as I saw you, I said, he's here because he's got us. It's cold. He's not in Florida.
And I'm not in Florida, right?
Nope.
I wouldn't wear this in Florida, especially now in June.
I saw you, and I said, darn it, get your ass out of here, buddy. Next time, Steve. You have no excuse, and no more being afraid of COVID. That's no excuse anymore.
I know it's no excuse, but I'll come up with any excuse to be isolated, so don't worry. I'll think of one. Unfortunately, I can't use COVID much any longer, so I'll think of something else.
Yeah.
Because it is helpful to know that you're doing it to yourself.
Absolutely.
Very important awareness. Oh yeah. People that don't know that.
Makes it, well, the victim mentality is the worst of all, right?
Yeah.
Right now, isn't it? Like,
It's
Yeah.
the worst. Because then you feel
no control.
no control. It's like you still have you're still suffering from whatever it is you're suffering from, but then you feel helpless because you feel like it's being done to you. At least if you realize that you are
Somehow are participating.
Yeah,
in creating.
you have some feeling of being able to ameliorate it. Like, ready?
All right, I'll read this. These two tough sentences. There is no pain that is not in some way the result of some denial of truth and denial of love. There is no pain that is not, in the last analysis, caused by a violation of spiritual law, a basic dishonesty, and somewhere an ill will. Once you fully understand this, you approach a crossroads. All right, 15 minutes.
Gonna put the timer, or do you want me?
I'll put it on.